Now, should parents be allowed to smack their children? The Scottish Government says no, and most of the parties at the Scottish Parliament agree with them.
Legislation is going through Holyrood just now and it looks certain to pass. But does the public agree that using force to punish your own child should be banned?
With us are Mary Glasgow from the charity Children First, who support a ban on smacking, and Jamie Gillies from Be Reasonable Scotland, a group which campaigns against the ban. Mary, first to you. Some people watching this will be thinking, I smacked my children when they were younger and they're absolutely fine. What is the need for this new legislation, this ban?
Well, I think as a mum, and you know, we need to think about what kind of what kind of country we want to be. We want to make sure that our children grow up with love, with nurture, with care. We know that we've had a long-standing problem in Scotland with violence, and it just seems really hypocritical that as a mother I might say to my child, don't you hit anybody else, but it's okay for me to hit you. It makes no sense to children. And also I don't think it makes sense in a country that sees itself as socially progressive, that recognises that children have rights and that we want them to grow up to be kind, compassionate and responsible citizens. It just simply seems out of step with both the evidence, the international evidence, that physical punishment and hitting children simply doesn't work, and it's out of step with most modern parenting techniques.
You can be a loving parent though and still give your child the odd smack in the bum, can't you? Or not?
I think it depends on the way that you look at that. So to talk about a smack on the bum sounds as if it's something that's, you know, useful and helpful. The evidence is clear that it is not an effective tool to help children to learn how to behave. But this is not about judging parents. This is not about saying to parents, you must do this, you mustn't do that. It's about saying the best way to raise children, the best way to care for children and help them to grow up to be kind, compassionate and considerate is to show them that same kindness and compassion. And the best way to help children develop good behaviour is to be demonstrating that yourself, to model kind, considerate, respectful behaviour.
Jamie, what do you make of that?
Well, yeah, we as a campaign, we would say that smacking is a very normal, ordinary part of many parents' lives. It's loving discipline to children. And we'd be clear that what we're talking about here is not violence. I think Mary touched on violence and hitting children. And the vast majority of parents who use a light smack or a tap on the hands are not being violent towards their children. This change in the law is proposing to remove the reasonable chastisement defence, and that's just a thing in the law which states that parents can use very mild, very light physical discipline with their children if they choose. And we'd state that removing this defence from law would leave loving parents who do smack their children open to prosecution and conviction for assault.
Who's going to report them?
The police, the police currently they have discretion because of the defence that's in law, and they can look at a case of a child, a report of smacking, and decide whether or not it is just a mild, reasonable thing, or whether it is abuse and it needs to be pursued further and made into a criminal investigation. But if this defence is removed, then the police will be compelled to investigate smacking in the way that they currently investigate all abuse.
Isn't there an argument that if the police are all of a sudden having to investigate lots of little things, like, say, a tap on the hand or something like that, that actually bigger issues and bigger abuses against children maybe won't get the attention that they potentially deserve?
And I think we have to be clear that James and his colleagues at the Christian Institute talk about a slap on the hand. That's not what we're talking about here. That's not what this bill is attempting to do. The bill is very clearly about removing the defence of justifiable assault in legislation. It's about saying that you cannot justifiably physically punish your child as a means of discipline. And we've heard from a series of experts at the parliamentary committees, doctors, social workers, police officers, the nurses. We've heard from a whole range of experts that says that that is simply not the case. And we've also heard from Gillian Van Turnhout, a senator from Ireland, who recently, just a couple of years ago, introduced the same legislation. And she was very clear in saying that they have seen no increase in criminalisation, no increase in child protection investigations, but rather a very positive change in Irish society, very positive change in behaviour, and a really positive change for children and their relationships with their parents.
Jamie, let's go back to that point then. Yeah. In a progressive society in the 21st century, do you not concede that actually it is about time we thought of more reasonable and rational ways of reasoning with children than physically reprimanding them?
Sure. Well, I think the law as it stands is very clear, it's very progressive, and it's often a lot of talk about the UN Convention on Children's Rights, which says that children shouldn't be subject to violence or abuse or intimidation. And the law as it stands is very clear. We need to state that. It does outlaw abuse, violence. It's very particular. You're not allowed to hit a child, aim a hit at its head, shake a child, use an implement. It has to be very mild, very light, very reasonable. And, you know, that tap on the hand is part of normal parenting. For many parents will realise if a child, for instance, is in a situation which is dangerous, if they're reaching out for a plug socket, which I did as a child, that tap on the hand is sometimes necessary to communicate the danger.
What about that, Mary?
That's not what this legislation is about. It's not about a tap on the hand. It's about, you know, the Christian Institute are the people that are opposed to same-sex marriage and civil partnerships. This is about an approach to family life and what we really believe about children. And there is no evidence that this is about, you know, making families who are, you know, looking after children feel that they can't discipline their own children. It's not about a tap on the hand. This is about the use of physical punishment to discipline children, and the evidence is that it doesn't work.
Very briefly, Jamie?
Yeah, on the evidence point, so it's interesting that in Wales the same thing is being proposed just now. And the government had a consultation last year, and in its consultation document, it looked at all the evidence abroad, and it said that there's very unlikely to be any evidence which shows that a light, infrequent smack is in any way harmful to a child. So when you state that smacking is harmful, the research evidence on that does not show that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mary Glasgow and Jamie Gillies, thanks very much indeed for being with us.
Thank you.